You're listening to This Week in America with Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Thank you for joining us on the program. Our guest is Fred Krakowiak. For close to 30 years, Fred worked as a financial planner, successfully managing investment portfolios exceeding $110 million. Accomplished, highly respected, but not really living the life he wanted. His path took an abrupt detour the day he decided to risk it all and chase his dream of becoming a nature and wildlife artist. From battling the bear markets of Wall Street to staring into the eyes of a male lion protecting his pride, Fred's life journey had definitely taken a turn. Through it all, he confronted challenges, navigated risk, defined success on his own terms. That's what made him a maverick. And he wrote about it in his new book, Tracking Your Inner Maverick, Career Transition for Trailblazers, Risk Takers, and Rule Breakers. And Fred is also the author of Africa, an Artist Safari, and The Artist Safari. He's recognized as a leading wildlife artist and African guide, presented his art and program at numerous zoos and museums across the country. His artwork, commissioned by private collectors all over the world, can be found on his website, maverickbrushstrokes.com. All the information on Fred and all of his books you'll find at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Fred Krakowiak with us on This Week in America. Hi, Fred. Welcome to the program. Great to have you with us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Rick.
I am looking forward to having this discussion, and I mentioned that you were extremely successful. Here's a business that you built from the ground up. You start the book off, Tracking Your Inner Maverick, by saying, I'm a recovering certified financial planner. Talk about the toll that took on you. It was said that you excelled in the profession, but your mind, body, and spirit were paying a high price. Most people would look at that and go, wow, Fred had it all, and he decided to, shift his gears. What was it that got you to the point that, I'd like to try something else that really would make me happy?
Well, the stress of managing other people's money becomes actually overwhelming at times. And with the volatility in the stock market, especially when 2003 came along, remember the crash then. I also experienced the crash 1 year after I was in the business in 1987. And then we had the tumultuous times of 2008. And also what happened after 2003, I had a baseless lawsuit filed against me. And that was actually a trigger for me to act. And I remember sitting in my attorney's office, staring out at the mountain through the window, and looked at her and let the sun actually rise in the east. And I looked at her and said, I'm going to sell my practice and pursue my passion. And she looked back and said, well, congratulations. And so it was the trigger of the lawsuit that got me started.
What's interesting is, if I recall, that the investment's off about 10%, the market's off like 50% at that time. And then I can sort of feel as I'm reading the book, Tracking Your Inner Maverick, that the burden that all of this responsibility placed on your shoulders, and if you're down a little bit, and everybody's down a lot in the market, they're still not satisfied. They expect things to turn around. And interesting you mentioned triggers, because you talk about in the book recognizing your triggers, and life is a series of triggers, and this is the one that got your attention. I'm sure you had triggers before, and this is one you paid attention to.
Well, a trigger, and we've all had many, but a trigger ignored actually many times can be a missed opportunity to reinvent yourself or to even reinvigorate your life. And this added stress of this lawsuit actually took a moment for me to step back and take inventory of exactly what my goals and my passions were. And I felt at that time it's time to rewire myself. And that's exactly the steps I took.
You talk about a survey once conducted, 1,700 global executives. Out of all of those, 51% said they likely would choose a different field. And you ask the question, what happened to those dreams when we were kids, the ballerinas, the ball players, the astronauts? And you say reality stepped in. Is that what happened in your life as well?
Well, I think all of us are, even yourself, can relate to the stress of our jobs. And what we should actually be able to do, and we do not, is look back and look at what inspirations we've had. Look at the photos that we've created, or I should say, photos that do create such a powerful source of emotion and inspiration. And think of it. Look back at the photos. Look back at what you did as a child. How much you enjoyed life. The things we collect. Look around us. The things we collect, they tend to represent who we are. And a lot of times we get stuck in such a business-oriented, stress-related position that we don't look outside the focus that we have on that structure.
Fred Krakowiak is our guest on This Week in America. His book is called Tracking Your Inner Maverick, Career Transition from Trailblazers, Risk Takers, and Rule Breakers. Information available at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Fred's website is maverickbrushstrokes.com. In the book, you talk about that first safari, that experience, and what you felt, and that's something that obviously stayed with you. Talk about that first safari and what that did for you, how that made you feel like, wow, reinvigorated.
Well, barely 24 hours had really passed since I set foot in Africa, and there I was crouching down in the grass with my guide behind me telling me, you want excitement, kneel down here and just take a good photo of this elephant who happened to be about 30 yards crossing the savannah. And all of a sudden, that elephant, the wind shifted, he picked up my scent, and he came charging through that dry grass, and my adrenaline just spiked. My heart started racing as, 13,000 pounds of enraged elephant bore down. I had two options. I could run, which my guide told me not to do, or I stood my ground. And by standing my ground, I actually told myself, this is the new adrenaline, this is the excitement I want to have in my life. I'm going to I'm just going to pass by what I have been doing and devote my life to my passion, which was wildlife art.
And in the book, you talk about a number of experiences there. Once with the hippos, and you're out in a canoe, and you said you've got an appreciation for how fragile and fleeting the nature of life is when the hippos are right up ready to tip you out of the canoe.
Well, that's, again, another scenario where the hippo had been, they had formed a barricade, and we had to cross the Zambezi River. And the reason that we had to cross the river was two large bulls were fighting. And as we crossed the river, one of the hippos didn't stand up, but one of the hippos broke water and opened his mouth. And I thought, wow, I'd get a great picture of this. And I picked my camera up to get a snapshot. And as I did that, he came charging, and Humphrey hollered, "Paddle!" Who my guide hollered, "Paddle, paddle now, Fred." And I started paddling hard, dropped my camera, and the hippo did brush the bottom of the canoe. And so that was the adrenaline rushes that you get in Africa are certainly bring some anxiety. But again, think about this. The considerable anxiety you have with dealing with the fluctuations of the market is also very extreme, and that was not in the original job description that I really had signed up for either.
Yeah, you can imagine not just sort of casually looking at the market results at the end of the day to see how you're doing, but your whole livelihood depends on those market results and looking at them probably on an ongoing basis throughout the day. You said, in going to Africa and doing the photography over there, that this really was more than a diversion. It offered limitless possibilities. Was that part of what the appeal was to you? Because it's like, this is a whole new world for me to explore.
Well, if you think about it, fear is the greatest roadblock to making a transition to rewire.
Yes.
And so when I went to Africa, I went because actually a wildlife critic had told me that I was not really capturing the soul in my art. And so I went to capture the soul of the animal by looking through its eyes and getting up close in my walking safaris. And what that did was not only open up and enabled me to rewire into becoming a wildlife artist. But it also allowed me to become an author. I'm now an author of 3 books. I now guide safaris in Africa. I'm an apprentice. I was an apprentice guide. Now I'm a guide with Humphrey as I do work in safaris together. It's opened up a plethora of opportunities. I give lectures. The original fear of going to Africa and having the elephant charge me has just allowed me to rewire myself into an entirely different number of careers.
The book we're talking about is Tracking Your Inner Maverick, Career Transition for Trailblazers, Risk Takers, and Rule Breakers. Fred Krakowiak is our guest on This Week in America. His website is maverickbrushstrokes.com. Information you can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. One thing you emphasize in the book is gain your footing, plan your transition. Talk about the importance of a plan and also remaining flexible during this transition period.
Well, you have to, first off, many of us dream, and I think what we have to do is avoid falling into the false sense of security that shelving our dreams and just planning to work longer will somehow revitalize the energy we have. That just does not work. So you need to have set a template and actually sit back, and if you're going to rewire your career, make sure you do have a plan. If you own a business, how are you going to transfer that business to a new owner? If you're not going to be happy sitting home, sitting on the couch. You're not going to be happy playing golf every day. Think about the things that you can do. Inspiration is all around us, and it's absolutely free. I mentioned earlier about the photos. One of the most interesting photos I found, my mom had passed away, and I was flipping through her photos, and I found a photo of me riding an elephant at the age of 5 years old. Now, little did I realize that I was planting a seed into my subconscious. I had
yes.
no idea that this fantasy years later would come through, but I called my aunt, and it was so funny, and I asked my aunt, I said, this is really me? And she goes, Fred, I was there that day. You were crazy. And the funny thing was, you jumped up that ladder, you just hopped on top of that elephant. There was no seat, there was no safety ropes, there were nothing there that today would allow us to do that.
Yes.
And she said, you just grabbed onto the back of that elephant's skin, and you were Tarzan. So I think that, again, we can't fall into that false sense of security that we can work longer or that we're going to retire off into the sunset. No, you always need to stay active.
Well, and it's interesting because as you're reading the book, and the book is Tracking Your Inner Maverick, Career Transition for Trailblazers, Risk Takers, and Rule Breakers, that once you made that decision, okay, I'm done with this, it literally took you, a couple of years before you fully made that transition, being able to take care of the business, make sure it was in good hands, make sure your people were taken care of, and do that transition to the new life. It's not something that happened overnight where you say, like, okay, I'm quitting, I'm out of here. It did take a while to accomplish.
It actually, in reality, I had to work harder than I'd really ever worked before, because now I was taking on a new career, plus I was transferring or rewiring, not only rewiring my career, but rewiring my clients they had to adjust to a new advisor, and they had to, make some other adjustments. And there was always fear. I looked and sat down and thought, how would I feel if my confidant was leaving me? Because let's face it, all of us probably trust our financial planner more than we trust our dentist.
Yes.
And so I actually sat in that position and told myself, this transition is going to take me 2-3 years. I've got to do it slow, and I have to do it right. And I did have mentors in that transition. And I think all of us, I'm not ashamed to say that I had mentors, because I think everyone needs to realize that, there are these mentors are put in your life to help you So you need to take advantage of it.
Well, once again, we come back to triggers, and that's when, as I'm reading that, it's like, yeah, we have these throughout life, and we really don't pay a lot of attention to them. You did to the one that got your attention with the impending lawsuit. A couple minutes left in the program. You talk in the book as well about tune in your senses, specifically on point, trusting your gut. How important is it to listen to your intuition, to follow your first instincts? Many times we go back and we overanalyze, and we end up maybe going against what our initial impression was.
Well, let me say that going with your gut is generally not a sound strategy for a certified financial planner. Money moves so fast on Wall Street.
Yes.
Money just goes fast on Wall Street, and very often your client wants you to substantiate a trade with, research, logic, hard facts. So intuition is really not a prudent determinant when someone's financial future is at stake.
Yeah, telling somebody I just had this hunch probably is not going to cut it.
No. But if you compare that with Africa, where reading nature requires you to make quick decisions on the fly. Take, for instance, the elephant charging. An elephant charging you at 30 yards away, you have 3 seconds to make a determination on whether or not that charge is going to be a mock charge or whether he's going to keep coming and run over you. So every detail of nature in Africa tells a story. Every tracker, every guide, he has to be able to read the body language of the animal that's pursuing you or that you are pursuing. You're at their mercy because you're in their home. And it's just like, Rick, if I came to your house, you could hide anywhere and ambush me because you know that home. So when I'm in Africa, those lions and elephants, they've been there forever. But the excitement comes that the anxiety that you have for me in Africa, just the thrill of being there is just your experience and knowledge can be supplemented with a healthy dose of intuition in Africa, where that intuition doesn't really work well as a financial planner.
Fred Krakowiak is our guest on This Week in America. His book is Tracking Your Inner Maverick, Career Transition for Trailblazers, Risk Takers, and Rule Breakers. His other books also available, Africa and Artist Safari and The Artist Safari. His website is maverickbrushstrokes.com. You can link on to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and be able to get directly to Fred's website. Fred, I really enjoyed the book. Thank you for being with us on the program. We'd love to have you come back, and we could talk about the artwork at that time. Thank you so much for being with us. I really enjoyed having the opportunity to read Tracking Your Inner Maverick, a lot of great lessons there, and enjoyed having the chance to talk with you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Rick.
It is our pleasure. You're listening to This Week in America. Our website, thisweekinamerica.us.